Welcome to the Indie Musician Summit 2021 with your host, Kate Westwood, brought to you by Westwood Management.
Welcome back to the Indie Musician Summit. It's Kate here, your host again, and I am going to take you all the way to Brisbane, Australia. We're chatting to Andy Irvine, I believe, Irvine, I've got to say it.
Irvine, yes.
Now I've just butchered it, but who is the CEO of Gyrostream, which is an incredible Aussie business, and we're going to talk all about it. But Andy, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be here.
Woo! Now, Gyrostream is a great new. It's new. How long has it been around? A couple of years now? 2?
It's just over 3 years now. Time flies.
Time flies. Well, let's jump into that, Andy. Tell me about who you are. I'd love to know a little bit of your backstory, how you kind of got to being a part of the music industry, and how you got to do what you're doing right now.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I started off like many music industry person playing in bands and actually playing music. So that was in the late 90s, early 2000s and so forth. And yeah, obviously relatively unsuccessfully at the time. But I then moved to the UK for a period of time. And my first kind of music job there was I was actually working for a music merch company. And so, but in the digital space, so this is pre-iPhones where people used to pay like $5 to download an image on their phones. And so we were selling like Iron Maiden wallpapers and various things, which was pretty cool. But obviously that business model was relatively short-lived because once the iPhones and so forth came along and you could download anything off the internet for free, people weren't really willing to pay $5 to have an image on their phone. So I then worked for Universal Music for a while, and that was in London, and that's when I first started working in digital supply chain. And so we were looking after sort of the worldwide releases of all the major albums coming out of the US and the UK for the rest of the world. So that was really exciting. And then I moved to Sydney, and I was working in the digital and physical production departments down there. For a number of years, which was a great experience, and then moved back. I was born and raised in Brisbane, so I moved back to Brizzy, and I was working for Due Process, who was setting up a label services company at the time called Create Control. So I got the chance to kind of, sort of start at the ground there and build some digital supply chain solutions for that business. And then started Gyrostream after that. So sort of everything from the major labels through to indies, through to completely independent music where I am now. And really that it was born out of the whole idea that there weren't proper local based independent music companies that could do the retail distribution that so many artists were going overseas to find companies to do that, but we're missing out on the local support and the local tech support in particularly as well, to be able to solve issues on the fly. So we built the platform, we launched it in 2018, and just been working with great Aussie music ever since and just growing the business and doing the startup thing and seeing where it takes us.
Whew, yep, small business and startups, really challenging but worthwhile, and it's great that you get to decide, okay, this is what we want to do and this is how we want to meet that need that you see. And I love that you saw a need and you thought, hey, why don't I be the one to actually jump on board. Now, I personally just released a single and I use Gyrostream because of those kind of reasons. One, because I love the platform, it looks cool. Sometimes the aesthetics matter. But also I thought I want to be able to have an Aussie company that I can connect to. I would love my income to go to support an Australian business, but also I wanted exactly what you said. I wanted that real time. I want to be able to call someone in my time zone and get an answer. I wanted to get that real time support. And so I've loved my experience so far. Why do you think that there was, apart from the Aussie thing, do you think that there is a need for a lot of, small boutique digital service providers like this? Or is it something that you just thought, well, there isn't one in Australia yet, so I wanted to jump in?
Well, I mean, I think, obviously partly the fact that I felt like the market here was being underserved by there's too many horror stories of artists that were being underserved by, major players internationally. In particular, when independent artists don't have a huge budget, when they're putting everything they've got into their PR and marketing, and release day rolls around and they've got, something goes wrong and it takes them 2 weeks to sort it out, you're missing your window of opportunity at that point. So, there's a lot of reasons why you need, like you said, need someone to be able to ring up and try and help you very, very quickly and do those quick turnarounds. So yeah, that was really a big part of what we wanted to do. And it wasn't really, that's probably the reason why we thought it was a good idea, but it wasn't until we actually launched that we realized how much lack of knowledge there was, I suppose, about the distribution side of things and how release strategies and being able to market your music and all those things. So we very quickly shifted focus into much more of like an educational capacity as well, and realized that, we're not just providing a data delivery service, because there's plenty of people that do that very well. But what we really need to be able to do is to engage the artists on a much more personal level and be able to answer questions specifically related to, their questions about releases, or educate artists about, the best practices on the digital services, and anything that we can do to try and get better outcomes, because there's great music coming through all the time. But, there's a lot of kind of, I guess, self-sabotage in terms of people just not knowing how to get the best results based around, the right timelines and all those sorts of things. So, it was very, it's not something that we really kind of planned for when we were setting up the business, but once we kind of were out there and talking to people, we realized there was a massive need for that. So, there is a place for boutique distribution services, and ones that are willing to engage with artists, because ultimately those relationships are going to drive better outcomes than just, putting your music through some giant conglomerate that just, spits it out the other end.
Yeah, I've definitely heard, and as you were saying, some of those horror stories of they released it under the wrong, it's not actually my account, it's some other person who has the same name as me, or it
happens all the time. Yeah.
Oh, look, and I do think that's, as you were saying, they're getting millions of people jumping on board, and so the capacity to engage and connect and follow up on those requests and those issues, and so I love that. That's one thing that is a benefit of what you're doing. But tell me a little bit about, I would love you to go into a little bit deeper in terms of those support, that education, but also some of the extra things that you offer on the platform that people can purchase on top of just the distribution. And look, it's sure it's a bit of a sales thing, but I wanted you to talk on the mindset of why it's important for sync, why it's important for playlists, why artists should, be engaging in these things, and why we should pay for help. I guess some of that mindset, rather than just, hey, come and look at Gyrostream because we're awesome. But these things are important in the life of an artist, and this is why we've created these offers.
Yeah, obviously we didn't set out to become a label or anything like that, so we wanted to be able to provide services for artists, and they can pick and choose what they needed. So we always talk about artists building teams around them. So, from a manager and marketing and PR and distribution and all these things. And so, we come at it from a base level of distribution as our core product, but we also wanted to be able to plug in other services around what we did for people that do want to build that team and aren't really sure where to go or who to talk to. And, you can pick and choose what services that you want from us. So, very early on, we identified a need for having some PR in-house that we could help artists with. And so, that was from our launch day, that was part of the service that we offered from day one. And it's really just developed from there. And as we talk to more artists and try and figure out, what they actually need and what they need help with, then we're able to plug some of those things in. So, like you said, it's, being able to produce vinyl and CD for artists who want to go on the road and sell that, and that was obviously a lot better a couple of years ago than it is now. And being able to offer a basic kind of sync service where we're talking to, music supervisors and stuff about potentially placing music and building up relationships with the DSPs and Apple and Spotify and Amazon and YouTube and the rest, and promoting the independent music to editorial teams at those playlists, and really trying to up the percentage of independent music that gets in those lists, and having someone that can champion that, because it's not something, it's those services that, often you don't get a chance to get exposure to unless you get signed. Whereas if we can be the company that can give you those opportunities, but you don't need to sign your life away to get a record deal, then that's something I think is really, really important. And then, like a year and a bit ago, launching our digital marketing. So we see an opportunity there, and being able to offer digital marketing packages for artists. And not every one of those is going to be right for every artist, but the flexibility that we've got in terms of being able to, artists being able to pick and choose what they need and what they need help with. And then they can go and build their teams around all the other things they need externally from that as well. But it's just trying to provide a place where they can come and get the help they need for specific things that they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so good. I love that you talked about in there the importance of a team, and that can often be a strange thing. You think, but I'm independent, I should be able to do it all myself, right? But you would say that's not true for artists. They need a team.
Well, it can be very overwhelming to try and do everything yourself. So, it depends on where you are in your journey. And I think it gets to a point, as you start to build your fan base and you get more followers, you need to organize tours, and you're doing all those other things that, you need some help, because it's pretty overwhelming for a single artist or a band to be able to manage all those things in-house and be able to have the kind of creative output that they want to be able to do to still build those fans. So, I think, it comes a time when, you need the manager, or you need the booking agent in particular, or you want to hire a PR or something. All these things any artist who's kind of business savvy and who's willing to go out there and network can do those things themselves. But, as a lot of, your listeners and viewers would know, that it takes a lot of work. And so it's really about, what can you focus on and do really well yourself, and where are your weaknesses, and how can you find someone that can kind of plug that hole for you to be able to help you in those areas. So, and everyone sort of has different thresholds when it comes down to it. But building a team at some point is really becomes a necessity as you start to develop your career.
Mm-hmm. And as you and I both know, I started what I'm doing about 3.5 years ago, and that, the fun stuff is like 30% of the work. And then the social media, or the scheduling, or doing the tax, or, figuring out, how to, sending emails to people and doing all that stuff, like that's 70% of the work, is the actual running of it, and the building and the foundations, and getting things really solid, so that then I can go and do the creative, or just chat with people, or like you're saying, be able to serve this great product. But there's so much that goes on behind the scenes, and I love that you talked about that. And I'd love your thoughts on the whole mindset of like an artist as a business, and whether that's something that you're seeing people take on. And now I'm throwing this out as a question that was on the list, but in terms of trends and independent artists seeing themselves as businesses, is that happening? Are people doing that, or are they still trying to just, get famous or get the streams? What's the kind of trend?
I definitely think there's a lot of independent artists have an exceptional work ethic, and do have their head screwed on in the right place. And being a retail distributor, we see the full range of artists come through the system. So, and so it's quite enlightening in that regard. But you always get a sense of, when you're talking to people, the ones that really know, walking out of the studio with your finished product, as that's only the beginning of the journey. So people do spend an inordinate amount of time getting the creative process right, and the worst thing you can do is just put it out in the world and then sort of dust your hands off and say, oh, I'm glad that's done now. Because, like you said, the work's only really just beginning at that point. And if you really want to get that music, into the ears of a lot of people, then it takes an inordinate amount of other skills that you need to have in terms of, the digital and the fan building, and being able to create content and audio visual stuff, and all the other things that go into kind of putting a release out. So and not everyone, you can't expect that everyone's going to be completely knowledgeable in all those things, which is coming back to the team mentality as well. But we see some extremely driven people all the time coming through our system, who are very digital savvy. They know how to grow their fan base and where to find those fans, and they know how to network and talk to people within the industry and get their music in front of the right people. And but it all, like you said, it takes a definite work ethic and desire to be able to do that, because it's like I said, it's not just about getting in the recording studio and the creative process. And some people are more than happy just doing that, and that's how they want to handle their career, and that's fine as well. But the ones that are looking to take it to that next level, it's there's quite a lot more to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you're talking about work ethic, and the reality is, the great thing is with the digital age is that anyone can be an artist now, which is really cool. And we have access to the world like we never had before. You don't have to send out physical press releases. You just send an email. You can have your press kit. You don't have to print that out anymore. You can have it on your website. You can reach and have, I think I was looking before, like someone from Albania was listening to one of my songs. I'm like, what the heck? I've probably never been there. I'm not going to tour there, but we have access to the world in this digital space. And I would love some thoughts around, what you think. There's obviously a big difference between the industry back in the day of, downloading the Iron Maiden song on your phone and playing Snake on your phone, like however it was back then. But what things have shifted and changed in a good way, but also in a challenging way in this new industry that's totally digital? What's been good and what's been challenging in that?
Yeah, I think, like you said just a minute ago, with anyone can be an artist now. It's almost a blessing and a curse in some respects. So there's, back when I was playing music, it was a very local affair, in that you sold CDs at your local gigs. If you're lucky, you could get them physically distributed to a few stores around Australia. You might, go and do a tour down in Sydney or Melbourne and sell more CDs out of the back of the van. But really, you were trying to grow your fan base, in your local region, in your suburb or your city or your state. And really, the thought of taking it any further was, to a lot of people, was the dream. But the reality was that was pretty tricky to actually get on a plane and take your music anywhere. So it would, and these days it's the complete opposite. Is that your fan base could be anywhere. It's highly likely it may not even be in your city or your state at all, but it'll be in some other far-flung part of the world where you need to. And so the impetus there becomes about discovery, in terms of discovering where your audience is to start with, and then discovering how to engage that audience. So if you're an artist that plays a particular style of music, the biggest audience might be Germany or South America or the UK or Canada or somewhere else. And so really it's about trying to figure out where they are firstly, and how to engage with them. And it's not it's not super difficult to do that research. We have the data. There's so much data at our fingertips at all times to be able to investigate this stuff. So if you're looking at artists that are in your field and in your genre, that maybe 2 steps up the ladder past you, where you want to be in a year or 2 years' time, and then maybe artists who are 5 steps up the ladder than you and 10 steps up the ladder than what you are. You can go and find all these artists on Spotify and see where their top 5 cities in the world are, and try and pick some trends as to where listeners are most engaged with these artists. You can go onto their social media and see the types of content that they're publishing, and see which posts are resonating the most with their audience, and see what their audience is actually enjoying the types of content. So, you can start to get a bit of a picture of, the audience that is out there for your music, and give you some ideas on how to try and engage with that audience, and find that audience, and where to put your marketing dollars. But you got to remember, when you put your music out on streaming, it's going to 400 to 500 million, active music listeners around the world at the click of a button. So but you're also, the bad side of that is that you're dealing with 50 or 60,000 other tracks that get uploaded that day as well. So You know, it's
Wow, really? 50 or 60,000? I thought
around
it was
60,000 tracks. Yeah,
wow.
it's around
Oh, man.
60,000 tracks are uploaded to digital platforms every day. So, you know, like you said, anyone can be an artist these days. So you're dealing with a lot of competition, but you know, there's out of those 60,000, they're not 60,000 legitimate artists uploading every day with actual proper music. There's a lot of stuff in there that you would consider as to be almost non-music content. So, you know, it's about trying to find that audience and trying to cut through that noise is the big thing.
Yeah. So amazing. I can't believe it's gone up to 60. I definitely thought it was 40. But I think that's so true. You know, we've come to this space, it's a blessing and a curse that now anyone can be, but now everyone's wanting to be. And so would you say that it's harder to track quality control and in terms of music now because we're doing it at home? You know, maybe we're producing it ourselves or we're just getting a mate to do it. Like, are you noticing in terms of I'm not sure how much of the tracks that you're listening to personally, but you know, in terms of quality level, production and songwriting?
I mean, like I said, because we're retail, we accept pretty much everything regardless of the quality. And I mean, again, that can be a good or a bad thing, but you know, we don't judge on the quality of the music. So anyone who wants to put their music on Spotify, provided it's not illegal or you know hate speech or you know inciting violence or something, then as long as it's a legitimate original piece of music that someone's written, the quality of it is you know it doesn't really matter. It can still be released on streaming services. So you know so that naturally because of that, there's certainly a lot of songs on Spotify, and the data tells you that there's millions of songs on Spotify that probably have never been listened to before. Or listened to once or something like that, that they release from time to time. So yeah, like you know, that's not necessarily a great thing for the industry, but it doesn't really change for the artists that are trying to cut through. You know, that's just a distraction. It doesn't change anything that they're trying to do. As long as their creative process, they're trying to get the best results. They're trying to get the best quality for their music, because it does, at the end of the day, to the user, it makes a difference. If your song sounds really great and it's a great song, that's going to make a difference at the end of the day, and that's going to cut above the rest. It's more about getting that song in front of those people so they have a chance to hear it.
Yep. Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's true. Well, that was good. That was one of my questions of, you know, who do you say no to, you know? And I love that there is an open forum. If people want to release, they can. And for so many people, it's the opportunity just the fact that you finished a song and you're putting it out into the world. That is a huge achievement, because there are millions of people who would love to do that but never actually do it. So whenever I see someone, even if it's not amazing, I'm like, well done for ticking that off.
We've got retirees who've wanted to put an album out for their whole lives and finally get the chance to do it. And you know, it's not my decision to deny them that right to be able to get their music out there for the first time. So yeah, that's cool.
Absolutely. And I think we are, to some extent, we're focused on, you know, the numbers, to use the numbers to validate the worth of something, you know, to say, well, this is valuable because this many people have engaged with it. But I think, you know, just that it's valuable because it's part of your creativity. And even if only 20 people listen, that's 20 individual people that may be impacted by your song and maybe, moved by the lyrics or inspired themselves. And I think would you say that it's good to have a bit of those expectations and to be aware of how the industry works? Do you think we're really aware of that as indie artists?
In what respect, sorry?
In respects to what we can expect from when we put our music out in the world, what might happen with it. And, you know, but isn't everyone going to see it and hear it now that it's on Spotify?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess, it comes down to, like you said, if you just put your music out there and don't do anything, then nothing will happen and no one will hear it, no one will find it. So that's why it's so important that if you do want to be heard and you do want to make a career out of it and actually, you know, get some income from it, you know, you've got to do all those things. Building a fan base back from when I was playing music to now, actually, the fundamentals haven't changed. You know, you've still got to make good music. You've still got to find the fans. You've still got to, engage with them. You've still got to, take them on that journey the entire time and grow it bit by bit. You know, the idea that, you put one song out and it gets on thousands of playlists and you're, all of a sudden out of nowhere, making all this money and things are going great. Like, that, again, it happens, but that's not the expectation that you got to go in with it. If in, you've got a 5-year plan, and if in 5 years that you've built, an organic fan base that's sticking with you through the whole thing, then that's a much more enviable position than having, good streaming numbers, but you couldn't sell 20 tickets to a show in your own town because no one knows who you are. You'd much rather have built that fan base over that time that that you're building your career off.
Oh, I think that's really wise, really important perspective to think about, because again, with numbers in terms of income, right, streaming isn't really the way. It's just got to be one part of what we do, right? I use the example of like being an octopus with all these different tentacles, that streaming is one of the tentacles, and PR is one of those, and social media and email lists and merch and shows. And I love what you were saying earlier on. People who have that work ethic are realizing that this is one part of what we do, but there's a lot more other things that deserve my attention to help me build it.
And and exactly, and the same with income streams. There's a lot of income streams within the music itself, and artists should be, trying to get as many of those pumping as well, from the obviously live and sync and all the other things, radio and all the other places where they can potentially pull an income from, along with trying to increase their streaming numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so good. I love that. Stepping into sync. How accessible do you think sync really is for an indie artist? Is it really just connected to who you know and who happens to listen to it, or do you really have to have someone who can be in the industry to show you how to do that, to get your foot in the door?
Okay, I think definitely you need to, I think it helps if you can make some networks and connections and have someone to represent your music. And you don't need to, these days, you don't need to sign a publishing deal to be able to find someone to represent what you're doing. So, like I said, it becomes part of your team at that point, coming back to the team thing. So I think, you need to find someone that's, potentially that can, that will take you on and actually pitch it, properly and get your music in front of some of those supervisors.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so good. I like that. I like thinking about Gyrostream as part of my team, and about, my booking agent and my manager and my photographer, but also like a sync agent being part of the team as well, rather than being the separate thing. And we may not all work in the same office together 9 to 5, but I like that perspective, because they're working for a period of time on my behalf. I love that. Andy, I would love to know, do you have any tips or tricks or strategies for indie artists wanting to get their start in music? I know we've talked about a couple of things, but are there any more that you want to throw out that could be, because we're wanting to make the summit really practical. If we were to do a PDF, these are the things that are Andy's, gold nuggets that we can take away.
I think, we sort of touched on the big thing really is just the mindset of making sure that you've got the mindset of taking your music global, rather than local, because there's lots of things that you still do in other tentacles, as you said, with regards to the local aspect in terms of radio and live and all those other things that you can be doing. But when it comes to the streaming side of things, you really have to have that mindset of thinking global and trying to figure out where your audience is, because that leads into your strategy from then, in terms of, setting aside a digital marketing budget. What does that look like, and where are you going to spend that money? It determines the type of content you're going to create, making sure that you've got some budget to create some visual content, because when people are looking on your Instagram and TikTok and your Facebook and all those sorts of things, it's the visual stuff that's going to really engage them. So knowing the type of content that you want to create is important, and that's going to give you some ideas about, from other artists in your genre that are doing it really, really well, and creating that release strategy. But really, it's sitting down and figuring out as you're in the studio and as you're recording stuff. It's really thinking about what your next sort of 6 to 12 month rollout looks like, and how many songs and when they're coming out, and making sure that you've got consistency in that strategy as well. The whole old way of doing things in terms of that 2-year type of album release cycle, putting an album out and then just disappearing for a couple of years and then coming back and doing the whole thing all over again, that doesn't exist anymore. people have very short attention spans. So, someone will come in and take your place quite quickly if you disappear for very long. So, as you're making music and creating music, you need to think about the timelines that allow you to be consistently putting music out, but also what pieces of content fit in between that, so that you're consistently engaging and growing that fan base over time, which is really important. So the first thing that we often say when we're talking to artists is like, walk me through your next 6 to 12 months and what does that look like? And a lot of them can't really articulate that particularly well, because they know they want to put their first song out, but then they don't know what sort of happens after that. So, even if you haven't recorded the music yet, you need to have a rough, not I say no, you don't need to know, you need to have a rough idea of where things are heading, so that you've got a plan in place of when you need to go and be in the studio and record again, or, what is the next, what's my live strategy as these singles roll out, and, all that kind of stuff. So it's really important to have that kind of that timeline in place, and then set actionable and reasonable goals alongside that. So if you've never released music before and your song's coming out, saying, I'm going to get this on high rotation on Triple J, is probably an unreasonable expectation. But saying that, I want to aim for these 5 or 10 community radio stations, and I really want to, focus in on that and get some airplay. I want to get, grow my followers by X% on my TikTok and my Instagram. I want to, do a launch show and, with another artist that I really like, and do something like that. And then, you start to grow those goals over time, so that by the end of that 12 months, and you've released maybe 4 or 5 songs, you have a whole bunch of great content, you can sit back and go, yeah, look, things are on the right track. So I think those are really critical things for people for us to be thinking about and planning for.
I think they're such great ideas, and really minute goals. Really, it's not like I want to have 10,000 Instagram fans, but I want to grow it from here to here in this period. I love how, small they are, but measurable they are as well. You can do that. It's achievable, it's realistic. What do they call that? SMART goals, right? So something that, have you heard that? Specific, measurable, achievable.
Oh yeah, yes, yep.
Timely.
Yep.
So not just, hey, I want to win a Grammy Award, or I want to, sing at the ARIAs or something, or that, in Australia the awards, but actually having some easier, like, to realistic goals that are in a time frame. And that's coming back to the whole business thing, right? So if you're a business, you're thinking ahead, not just like, oh yeah, the shelves are empty, what are we going to put on them?
Yeah.
We actually have everything in the back already to put on the shelf, like any.
And it breaks down the tasks as well, because it gets overwhelming, because you think, I need to do all this stuff. But if you're aiming for this particular little goal now, and you've got to do this bunch of tasks to make that happen, that's much more easy to manage. But by the time you get to the 12 months and you look back at all the things that you've done, you'd be so impressed with yourself that you've managed to actually pull it all off.
Yeah.
But you've broken it down into manageable pieces and and manageable goals along the way.
And that helps with the overwhelming sense of the industry. It's like trying to get one thing out of the cupboard and everything falls on you. It can feel overwhelming because we don't know what to do. We're new, we're trying to navigate it, and we're creators trying to run a business, like trying to figure out how to do all that boring 70% stuff that has to get done so we can do the creative. So I love what you're saying. I think that's really, really helpful. We'll definitely put all of those thoughts and tips and tricks into a PDF so that people can download them and go, this is what Andy said, and it's great ideas. Any others?
I think, you've really just got to be able to, I'm just a big believer in only stressing about stuff that you can control. So, there's a lot of things that especially creative people worry about that's completely out of their control. So, it's just about managing all those things that we were talking about. And there's a lot of them. But what's within the sphere of control. So, and that's kind of helped me a lot through, everything that we've been doing here and stuff like that. So, it's important for artists to be able to, break everything down into those manageable pieces and not get too worried if certain things, if they don't get an ad, or if the PR thing doesn't work out the way they wanted. Because the thing about distribution these days is it is easier than ever, So just because you put a song out and it doesn't do as well as you would have hoped, doesn't mean the next one won't have a different effect, or the one after that, or the one after that. So I think persistence is a really important thing in this industry, more so than ever, because, there's especially for artists who do a lot of their own recording and producing their own stuff, they're not having to pay for, big studios and stuff like that anymore. It's like, it's people, I was going to say, artists get better and better and better the more they do things. So it's like, just because you didn't have the impact with the first single or the first EP, whatever you were doing, you're learning about the industry every time you put something out. So, and you're meeting new people every time. The longer you're in it, the more people you meet. So with the experience that you're getting plus the networking, that only leads to bigger and better things in the future. And the distribution side of it's never been easier before. So, people can release music, they can reinvent themselves, they can do all sorts of things, and you're not having to like manufacture 1,000 CDs and have them sit under your house like you did 20 years ago. You can just keep trying, keep putting music out until something sticks. And so I think persistence is really, really important.
I love that. And I have heard a quote that says that, that most small businesses don't really start making a profit until year 3 or year 4, and so if we think about ourselves as a business, we recognize that it's a long game. We're building, customers and fans, we're building awareness, we're figuring out where we sit in the market with our competitors, all that kind of stuff. And it takes time to build that. Unless you've got like independently wealthy money just to do lots of marketing, you don't have to worry about that stuff. But if you haven't got, thousands of dollars and, to do heaps and heaps of marketing, then we've got to do that, building one fan at a time, one relationship at a time, one, song at a time. And I love, there is that mindset of thinking long-term and thinking like a business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Andy, I love
exploring opportunities. Like, I think a lot of artists, opportunities come up, but a lot of them get scared because they think they're not ready, or it's like not the right time, or something else happens. But really, it's take opportunities when they come up and look for opportunities. I mean, the whole like NFT thing, just as an example, it's like some artists have jumped onto that. Independent artists have jumped on that, and they may not be. They may not be getting a lot of streams, for example, but they've cultivated a fan base that, is ripe for that type of product, for example, and they're making extremely good, income out of that side of things, just because they could see the opportunity when it came up and they jumped on it earlier than everyone else. So I think, and that comes back to being, savvy and digitally savvy and business minded and entrepreneurial and stuff like that. And I think all artists need to have all those skills.
Mm-hmm. Doing a Patreon or something like that, where people are paying you every month to do your make your art, rather than necessarily just coming to a show once a year. I love that. There's lots of opportunities in the digital space to experiment and try new things, and to look for what works and what doesn't, and then do more of what works. And I love that. Andy, one thing that I love that you guys do that I didn't know was possible, and I'd love if we could talk about this. We go back to Gyrostream. So let's say, I have released music before, and it's on another platform, and I released my single with you. Now, if I wanted to I used to think that meant that I couldn't change, because if I wanted to take it off one platform and one distributor and upload with another, that I would lose all my streams and I would lose all my data. Now, apparently that's not true. Talk me through how this works.
No, it's not true. And a lot of people, especially in the label world, there's lots of shifting of repertoire going on all the time. So those platforms have built a way for that to happen, and it's very simple. And we have lots of artists moving every week from various different services who want to put all their music in one place, which makes complete sense. And so, it's just a very simple process of re-uploading with ourselves or the new distributor. Every track you would have previously released will have an ISRC code attached to it. It's good practice to bring that ISRC code with you from that previous distributor, and we have an online tool called findmyisrc.com, which allows you to find it if it's on Spotify. And then you re-upload with us, for example. We deliver it to Spotify and Apple and the rest of them. And because it has the same ISRC code, because it is the same length, because the artist name is the same and the track name is the same, those platforms and those systems recognize it as being the same song, and they will copy, within about 2 days, they will copy all that data, the stream count, the playlist data and all that stuff across to the new version. And then at that point, you can ask your old distributor to do a takedown and it will remove. And then your music is now live under us or the new distributor. Mm-hmm. And then it's all happy days from there. So yeah, it's a pretty simple process. It involves you re-uploading it again, obviously. Mm-hmm. But that's not usually too hard to do, and we provide a free transfer, like a discount for people who are doing that anyway, so they can move their catalogue across. So it's pretty straightforward.
I love that. Now, it totally makes sense because I understand ISRC code, it's the digital footprint, and barcode online. But for some reason, I thought, oh, you lose your streams if you move over. Maybe that was just an old wives' tale or something that I was listening to. Or maybe it was just not encouraged, so there wasn't...
Yeah, I think maybe there could be some services that suggest that you will, to try and keep you locked in and stuff like that. But, yeah, it doesn't happen. And like I said, it's the ISRC code. It should be linked to that. I mean, it's good practice to link it anyway, because every time you make a recording, the ISRC code is for the recording of that song. So regardless of whether that song goes on a single album, best of, compilation, you should retain that ISRC code for that song, the life of that recording.
Yeah, no, that's so true. That's really good and really helpful information. And I think, that's something that even I would consider doing, is moving over, because I am one of like having everything on the same platform and understanding how it works. And again, loving being able to support in small businesses and creative businesses in my local area, in my country. So, that's, I'm talking about it, and I wanted to chat to you because I really wanted to encourage Australian businesses. I wanted to encourage, supporting local, especially in this space of the world that we're living in right now, primarily here in Australia, because so many of us can't gig, we can't play.
Yeah, exactly. And look, the industry has been so super supportive, and it does, like I said, it's been, for us, the support from the local market and the local industry has been amazing. So, yeah.
Well, you've got my support. Hey, Andy, as we kind of wrap up, a question that I'm asking every speaker, because I think it's so key, just in general normal life, about being a holistic, healthy human being, but especially in the pressures of art and creativity and the comparison, competition of, the creative industries, our mental health is so important. So I'd love to know, what are you doing to take care of yourself in that space, whether you do it all the time or are winning at it or not, that's not really the point. But do you have any, because I don't always do all my things all the time, any, things that you're doing to manage your own personal mental health?
I know what I do wrong. I could talk about that, but yeah.
Sure. I mean, let's just have a chat.
Well, yeah. I mean, I definitely don't get enough sleep. That's for sure. So that's something I need to work on. So I would definitely recommend people get enough sleep. But I think, as I was saying earlier, about your sphere of control and being able to just focus on stuff that you control, because I find that, people that I talk to, tend to worry about a lot of stuff that really they don't have a lot, as I said, you can't gig at the moment. That's not really in your sphere of control. Whether you can gig, so you've got to look for other avenues to get your music out there and focus on the things that you can do. Releasing and marketing and talking to your fans and doing stuff online and doing all that kind of stuff until we get back to some level of normality in that sense. And I know that, particularly, I mean, we're very as a couple of things, we're fortunate we're in Brisbane at the moment, when this is being recorded, because we're still relatively free.
Yeah.
And, we're very fortunate that we're a digital business as well. So, there's many parts of the industry right now that are completely devastated, much, much worse than, any impacts that we've seen as a business. So, I think, I guess to answer your question, I mean, I don't have a whole heap of awesome, enlightening tips myself, unfortunately. other than, just trying to focus on things that, can directly benefit what we're doing and what I'm doing, and try not to worry about all the distractions and the noise and all that sort of stuff that, keeps people from kind of missing their goals and their opportunities.
I think those two things are valuable. Get a good amount of sleep, get your 8 hours. Don't do what Andy does. Now, I don't have kids, so I can get up whenever I want, so that's helpful. And I work for myself, so, always a benefit. But also then what you're saying is just spend time on the things that you can control and just kind of let go of the stuff that you can't. I think that's really helpful, because that's that internal pressure that we put on ourselves to try and worry about something that we can't make happen or not happen. So really helpful thoughts there, Andy. I just want to throw out, as we kind of wrap this up, are there any other one more things or any final thoughts that you want to share with the summit attendees?
I guess, again, probably reiterating what I've said before, but, I just think it's really important for people just to keep trying. Like, I think, it's so easy for people to feel dejected if they don't get the results that they're looking for straight away. And, we live in a pretty fast-paced world at the moment where things just seem to be flying by at a million miles an hour, and all the different platforms that we're supposed to take control of. And, the artists that we see that really, having success are the ones that have really stuck at it, and they're not brand new. They've been doing it for 3 or 4 years and honing their skills and building their audiences, and then, something sort of clicks and breaks through, or gets on the radio and gets some great play, and all, I can't remember the exact quote, but, everyone who seems like an overnight success generally has been honing their craft for many, many years behind the scenes. And so people don't really get to see, what's going on before, we look at artists and we think, geez, they came out of nowhere, but, they were doing it. They're sitting in their bedroom writing for 6 months or a year and recording and, networking and doing all those other things, behind the scenes that we never get to see. So, those are the things that, ultimately create the rewards that most artists are looking for. So, it's not that whole notion of overnight success really is complete fallacy. So yeah, it's really important for artists to be aware of that and be, every day be working on their goals and working on their music and working on their creativity and working on their business, and just keep that persistence going.
Andy, I love all of those things, and I'm totally a repeater myself, and I think that's how we get our points across, is by saying them a couple of times. But I love that mindset and that perspective. Thank you so much for being a part of the summit. We'll definitely put all the links to your socials and to Gyrostream in the description, so people can have a look and check it out. And for me personally, that's encouraging, that if you're one of those people, summit attendees, who's had some challenges with your previous distributor, the great thing is you don't have to, it's not like a bank, you don't have to have loyalty to them. I mean, you don't have to have bank loyalty either. You can shop around, and that's new information to me around the fact that you can move your catalog. Takes a little bit of effort, but it's, that you can do it. And so that means you can shop around and find one that works best for you. And it may not be Gyrostream, but if it is, and you're in Australia, we're really happy to support an Australian business. So I'm happy to proud to promote that and to talk about that, because I think that's really valuable, especially in these times. So Andy, so great, lovely to meet you, by the way, and
yes,
well, this is why the summit's here, as we want to continue to support and encourage and resource independent artists. So thank you for being a part of that.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.